Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a world where no law, no action from the government can go unchecked, where the Constitution is the supreme law of the land and no branch of government is above it. This is the legacy of Marbury v. Madison, a landmark decision that transformed the judicial branch into the ultimate guardian of our rights. In 1803, Chief Justice Marshall made a bold move that forever changed the balance of power in America. Stay with me, because understanding this case is key to understanding the very foundation of our justice system. And ladies and gentlemen, Marbury v. Madison, a landmark decision in 1803, stands as the cornerstone of American judicial power. In this case, Chief Justice John Marshall, in a profound moment of constitutional interpretation, solidified the judiciary's role as the final arbiter of the Constitution's meaning. The case arose when William Marbury petitioned the court to compel James Madison, then Secretary of State, to deliver his commission as a justice of the peace. However, the ruling did not simply concern the delivery of Marbury's commission. It addressed the broader question of judicial authority. Marshall's opinion introduced the principle of judicial review, asserting that it was the duty of the courts to examine the constitutionality of legislative and executive actions. He boldly declared that any law inconsistent with the Constitution was void, establishing the judiciary as an equal branch of government tasked with safeguarding the constitutional framework. While the court found that Marbury was entitled to his commission, it also ruled that the specific statute Marbury relied upon to bring his case to the court was unconstitutional, as it expanded the court's original jurisdiction beyond what the Constitution permitted. This critical decision set a precedent for the judiciary's power, laying the foundation for its role in interpreting the Constitution and ensuring that no branch of government could overstep it. Bounds in this way, Marbury v. Madison not only resolved a specific dispute, but fundamentally altered the relationship between the branches of government, guaranteeing that the judiciary would serve as the ultimate guardian of the Constitution, with the authority to review laws and actions that potentially violated its principles. The case cemented the judiciary's place in the American system of checks and balances, ensuring that no government act could go unchecked if it contradicted the Constitution. This pivotal decision established the enduring strength of the judiciary in shaping American law and governance, confirming that judicial power is integral to the preservation of the nation's legal order. And Marbury v. Madison, as we have seen, was not merely about one man's pursuit of a position. It was about the preservation of the very principles on which this nation was founded. It was a battle for judicial independence, the protection of the Constitution, and the checks and balances that ensure no single branch of government dominates the others. In the years following this monumental decision, the significance of judicial review became clearer as it allowed the courts to act as a bulwark against legislative overreach and executive encroachment. The idea that the judiciary could declare a law unconstitutional and in essence strike it down was revolutionary. It placed the courts at the forefront of constitutional law, ensuring that the highest ideals of the American people, freedom, justice, and equality, could not be undermined by the actions of elected officials. And as the years went by, Marbury v. Madison continued to echo in the halls of American jurisprudence. It provided the judicial branch with the power and responsibility to scrutinize the actions of both Congress and the President, ensuring that every law and action conformed to the framework of the Constitution. By asserting that the Constitution was the supreme law of the land, Marshall's opinion emphasized that no government act, whether passed by Congress or signed by the President, could be above scrutiny. This was more than just a procedural ruling. It was a statement of the role the judiciary was destined to play in maintaining the integrity of the nation's legal system. And the power to interpret the Constitution was now firmly vested in the judiciary, but it was also a responsibility. With judicial review, the courts took on the solemn duty to protect the rights of individuals against any infringement by the government, whether by legislative acts or executive orders. The courts became the protector of the minority, ensuring that the will of the majority did not trample on the rights and freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. This was especially important in a democracy where the law could be subject to the whims of popular opinion or political expediency. And the significance of Marbury v. Madison transcended the immediate context of the case itself. It represented the very essence of the American judicial system, a system in which the courts are entrusted not merely to interpret laws, but to safeguard the fundamental values of liberty and justice. It created a profound shift in the understanding of the balance of power between the branches of government, empowering the judiciary to stand as the final word on matters of constitutional law. The decision reaffirmed that no government, regardless of its power or position, could violate the Constitution without consequence. The case laid the groundwork for future legal challenges and court decisions that would further define the role of the judiciary in protecting civil liberties, enforcing the separation of powers, and upholding the rule of law. And in the decades that followed Marbury v. Madison's principles would resonate in some of the most important decisions in American history, including landmark rulings on civil rights, voting rights, and the separation of church and state. It reinforced the notion that the Constitution was a living document capable of evolving and adapting to meet the needs of a changing society, but always bound by the fundamental principles of justice, equality, and fairness. Marbury v. Madison did not just change the legal landscape. It shaped the moral and philosophical direction of the nation, ensuring that the judiciary would remain vigilant in its duty to protect the rights of every American regardless of their status, their wealth, or their position in society. And in the context of the modern legal system, the power of judicial review remains a cornerstone of American democracy. Every time the courts strike down an unconstitutional law, they are echoing the legacy of Marbury v. Madison. They are reminding us that the Constitution is not just a document to be admired. It is a living, breathing force that guides the nation and protects its people. Marbury v. Madison represents the enduring belief that the courts must not only interpret the law, but actively preserve the spirit of the law, ensuring that the ideals of justice, liberty, and equality are upheld regardless of the political forces at play. And Marbury v. Madison established not just a legal precedent, but a philosophical shift in the conception of law in America. As the court asserted its role in interpreting the Constitution, it emphasized that the judiciary was not merely a passive actor in the system of government, but an essential guardian of the Constitution's integrity. This decision expanded the understanding of judicial responsibility, charging the courts with the duty to actively safeguard the Constitution from violations, whether deliberate or accidental, by the other branches of government. The ruling reinforced the idea that the Constitution was not a mere historical artifact, but a living document, the interpretation of which was the judiciary's solemn responsibility. And over time, judicial review became an intrinsic part of the legal landscape. It empowered the courts to hold Congress and the President accountable for their actions, ensuring that no law or executive order could undermine the Constitution. This judicial power however, did not make the judiciary an unchecked force within the government. On the contrary, it underscored the importance of the judiciary's role within the broader system of checks and balances. Judicial review did not allow the courts to dictate policy, but rather gave them the authority to examine laws and executive actions for their constitutionality. It allowed the courts to strike down unconstitutional laws and executive orders, thus ensuring that the actions of elected officials and government leaders did not violate the fundamental rights enshrined in the Constitution and the responsibility granted to the judiciary through Marbury v. Madison was a heavy one. It required the courts to engage in careful analysis, ensuring that each case was evaluated with the utmost respect for the constitutional framework. The courts became the guardians not only of the text of the Constitution, but of the principles behind it, the concepts of liberty, justice, and equality. This duty was particularly critical in a nation where the rule of law was central to the very concept of democracy. Without judicial review, the system of checks and balances would be incomplete. The judiciary, by having the power to declare unconstitutional any law or government action, became the protector of the Constitution and the rights it guarantees. And the decision also marked a decisive moment in the development of American constitutional law, emphasizing the need for a coherent and unified interpretation of the Constitution. The judiciary was now the body responsible for providing this interpretation, ensuring that the Constitution's application remained consistent across different cases and evolving societal contexts. In the absence of such a role for the judiciary, the Constitution could have been subject to varying interpretations, leading to a fragmentation of the legal system and inconsistent application of law. By establishing judicial review, Marbury v. Madison prevented such fragmentation, allowing the courts to maintain a unified approach to interpreting the Constitution and protecting the legal rights of individuals. And as the years passed, Marbury v. Madison's influence expanded, with the principle of judicial review being used to challenge and overturn laws that conflicted with the Constitution. The ruling found its application in landmark cases that shaped the development of civil rights, social justice, and democratic governance in America. Whether in cases involving the rights of minorities, the protection of freedom of speech, or the preservation of due process rights, judicial review served as the tool through which the courts ensured that the Constitution was faithfully applied, and moreover, Marbury v. Madison also served as a critical reminder of the importance of the judiciary's independence. The case highlighted the necessity for the judiciary to remain free from external influence, especially from the other branches of government. In an era where political pressures and the shifting tides of public opinion could threaten the stability of the law, the independence of the judiciary established in Marbury v. Madison became a safeguard against the erosion of constitutional principles. The ruling reinforced the notion that judges, in exercising their power of judicial review, must do so with impartiality and fidelity to the law, undeterred by political considerations or personal biases. And in the contemporary context, Marbury v. Madison continues to resonate, reminding us of the judiciary's essential role in upholding constitutional governance. As new legal challenges arise and the scope of governmental power is tested, the legacy of judicial review remains as vital as ever. It stands as a testament to the foresight of Chief Justice Marshall and his colleagues, who in their decision not only defined the judiciary's role, but also reaffirmed the enduring power of the Constitution to guide and govern the nation. And the decision in Marbury v. Madison not only secured the judiciary's power of judicial review, but also laid the foundation for the court's role as active participants in the governance of the nation. The principle of judicial review established in this case has since been instrumental in ensuring that laws and governmental actions remain in accordance with the Constitution. This landmark decision signaled to future generations of jurists that the courts would not be passive observers but active defenders of the Constitution's framework and its guiding principles. The judiciary, as Marshall emphasized, was not merely an arbiter of disputes, but a critical check on the powers of both the legislative and executive branches. The recognition of the judiciary as a co-equal branch of government with its own independent authority marked a defining moment in the establishment of American constitutionalism. And by asserting the authority of judicial review, Marbury v. Madison effectively empowered the courts to scrutinize the actions of the government, ensuring that no law or executive action could undermine the constitutional protections afforded to the citizens. This protection extended beyond the individual case at hand and had a broader societal impact, ensuring that the courts were always vigilant in guarding against the abuse of power. The case further emphasized that the courts in their examination of laws must not only evaluate the letter of the law, but also its conformity with the spirit of the Constitution. Judicial review therefore became a means of enforcing the Constitution's values, ensuring that they were upheld in both letter and practice. And as judicial review evolved, it became a central tool for the courts to address the issues of the day, from civil rights to the regulation of government power. Whether in the context of racial equality, the protection of free speech, or the enforcement of due process, the courts used their power of judicial review to strike down laws and actions that violated constitutional rights. Marbury v. Madison had established that the Constitution was the supreme law of the land, and no government action could stand in contradiction to it. This unwavering adherence to constitutional principles gave the judiciary the strength to shape the trajectory of American law, ensuring that legal developments aligned with the fundamental values enshrined in the Constitution. And Marbury v. Madison also had far-reaching implications for the balance of power within the federal government. The decision underscored the importance of the separation of powers, a principle at the core of the Constitution, by ensuring that each branch of government remained within its prescribed boundaries. The court's decision to assert its authority to review the constitutionality of laws meant that no branch of government could arrogate powers to itself beyond those explicitly granted by the Constitution. The case ensured that the legislative and executive branches could not act with impunity, reminding them that their actions would always be subject to judicial oversight. This concept of checks and balances became fundamental to the functioning of the government, reinforcing the principle that no single branch could dominate the others. And in the years following Marbury v. Madison, the notion of judicial review became firmly embedded in American legal thought. Its application expanded, reaching into numerous areas of constitutional law, from the protection of individual rights to the regulation of governmental power. As the court continued to use judicial review to strike down unconstitutional laws and actions, it reinforced the belief that the judiciary was not simply a passive body, but an essential safeguard of liberty. The expansion of judicial review was not without controversy, as it often placed the courts in direct conflict with the political branches. However, the foundational principles established in Marbury v. Madison have stood the test of time, proving that the judiciary's role in safeguarding the Constitution is indispensable to the maintenance of the rule of law. And in today's legal landscape, the power of judicial review remains a cornerstone of the judiciary's function, enabling courts to address constitutional questions and protect individual rights. The decision in Marbury v. Madison, therefore, continues to resonate not just in the historical context of its time, but in its continued influence on the interpretation and application of the Constitution. As society evolves and new legal challenges arise, the judiciary remains a key player in ensuring that the Constitution's values are preserved, standing firm as the protector of justice, equality, and the rule of law. The legacy of Marbury v. Madison is thus not merely a matter of legal precedent, but a reminder that the judiciary's duty to uphold the Constitution is vital to the continued functioning of the nation's democracy.